Imagine waking up every single day, slowly, deliberately, being poisoned by the man you vowed to spend your life with. Not a quick, dramatic end, but a terrifyingly slow decay, designed to make you question your own sanity, to make everyone around you believe you're simply losing your mind. That was my reality for 3 agonizing years, a private hell where I fought for my life, one agonizing, poisoned day at a time. Main story. They say good things come to those who wait. For me, that wasn't a comforting cliché. It was a chilling, desperate strategy for survival. For 3 years, I secretly collected evidence against my husband, Austin, who was systematically poisoning me. Not the kind of poison that kills you in an instant, but a slow, insidious torment that chipped away at my health, my mind, and my independence. It was the kind that made doctors shrug and friends look at you with pity, while he, the picture of devotion, subtly tightened the noose around my life. It began subtly, about a year into our marriage. Nagging headaches that always hit after dinner, stomach issues that flared up then vanished, dizzy spells that would knock me off my feet, and a bone-deep fatigue that no amount of sleep could ever touch. At first, I dismissed it as stress, a new virus, anything but what it really was. But it kept getting worse. Doctor after doctor dismissed my fears, diagnosing anxiety, IBS, or most chillingly, telling me it was all in my head. Austin was always there, holding my hand, playing the deeply concerned husband. He'd tell them how worried he was, how sometimes I'd get confused, even paranoid. He'd gently explain how he'd had to take over all our finances because my brain fog had become so severe. Austin and I had been together for 7 years, married for 4. Everyone adored him. Handsome, successful, endlessly patient. Friends would tell me how lucky I was to have a man who stood by me, who managed everything when I was too sick to function. What a saint, they'd coo, watching him cancel plans to stay home with me. A perfect husband. But deep down, a cold dread was starting to fester. Something felt profoundly wrong. When he traveled for work, I'd feel better. My headaches would ease, my stomach would settle. I'd actually have moments of clarity, moments where I felt like me again. Then he'd come home. Within days, the dizziness would return. The weakness, the terrifying memory lapses where entire conversations vanished, hours lost as if my brain simply shut down. I'd wake up groggy, disoriented, with no recollection of falling asleep. The first time the horrifying truth truly hit me was in the kitchen. I walked in, expecting him to be busy, and saw him, my loving husband, adding something to my tea, his back to me, thinking I was still in the bathroom. My heart slammed against my ribs. I confronted him, directly, immediately. Big mistake. He didn't miss a beat. He'd been recording me on his phone. He played it back for my mom, his parents, our closest friends, Vita and Justin. I sounded hysterical, desperate, accusing him, my perfect husband, of trying to hurt me. Austin, in contrast, was impossibly calm, reasonable, suggesting I take my medication, reminding everyone the doctor had warned about these paranoid episodes. Everyone looked at me with a sickening blend of pity and fear. Vita, my oldest friend, pulled me aside, her voice a hushed whisper. Maybe you should listen to Austin. Maybe you do need help. After that, his suggestions became more insistent. Psychiatrists, residential treatment, my safety. When I was doubled over with stomach pain, he'd stroke my hair, whispering, "I'll always take care of you no matter what." He'd tell people how challenging things were becoming, but that he'd made vows, in sickness and in health, and he'd never abandon me. Their admiration for him only deepened. Poor Austin, with his sick wife. I knew then, if I said anything again, he'd use it to paint me as completely insane, maybe even have me committed. So, I stopped talking. I waited. I watched. My fight for survival went underground. I started secretly dumping coffee he made for me, avoiding any food he prepared, claiming bland foods made my stomach feel better, so I'd make my own. I'd pretend to eat his meals, then flush them when he wasn't looking. My secret weapon became activated charcoal tablets, hidden in a tampon box, swallowed whenever he left the house. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to feel stronger, clearer. Days where my mind was sharp, moments where I could think straight for the first time in months. That's when my suspicion solidified into chilling certainty. But suspicion wasn't proof. I needed undeniable, concrete evidence. I converted our guest room into an office, claiming I needed my own space because his snoring was making my disturbed sleep even worse. I started sleeping there most nights. He didn't like it. I could see the frustration and calculation in his eyes, but he couldn't argue without looking controlling to others. My first victory. Midway subscribe line. By the way, if you're still with me, still unraveling this horrifying story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the shocking twists coming next, or any of my future stories. Main story continued. I set up a tiny camera in the guest room, waiting for months. What it captured still haunts my nightmares. Austin, creeping into the room at night, checking if I was truly asleep, then adding something to the water bottle I kept by my bed. Sometimes he'd just stand there, watching me breathe, a look on his face that wasn't concern, but something far darker. Once, I saw him testing my reflexes while I slept, pinching my arm, seeing if I'd wake. Another time, he held a mirror to my nose, as if checking for breath, and the look of disappointment when he saw the fog was unmistakable. With the video evidence secured, I moved on to the next phase. I sent hair samples to a lab for testing, paying cash, using Vita's address to avoid suspicion. I saved bits of food he'd special prepare for me, labeling containers, hiding them in a cooler in my trunk. Every symptom, every time he gave me food or drinks, every terrifying memory lapse, I documented it all in a journal I kept hidden at Vita's house. I even started taking daily photos of myself, meticulously tracking the physical changes. The weight loss, the yellowing skin, my brittle hair. This meticulous, terrifying collection went on for almost a year, then another. I played the part. The weak wife, growing more forgetful, more dependent. I deliberately knock things over or stumble over words mid-conversation when others were around, creating the very picture he'd painted. All the while, during what he thought were therapy appointments, I was secretly meeting with a lawyer. My lawyer uncovered even more horrors. Austin had taken out extra life insurance on me. He'd been actively communicating with my doctor about my deteriorating mental state, telling colleagues I was showing signs of early-onset dementia. He'd been researching arsenic poisoning, looking up untraceable toxins, even making casual jokes to friends about being a widower someday. The third year was the hardest. Austin started bringing his friend Otto around more, a pharmacist. They'd whisper together, stopping abruptly whenever I entered the room. I'd catch chilling phrases, build tolerance, might need something stronger. Then he started talking about moving us somewhere quieter, remote, where I could rest properly. He mentioned his cousin Annie's lake house. Isolated, peaceful, no one for miles. He started making plans without consulting me, telling people the move was for my health. He bought hiking equipment, fishing gear. He even casually mentioned to Justin how deep the lake was, how easy it would be to disappear there. I knew then, with a cold certainty that sliced through my fear, that my time was running out. I couldn't wait any longer. But going to the police with partial evidence would be his word against mine. The word of a mentally ill woman. My own mother was already talking about guardianship. So, I did something desperate, something terrifyingly dangerous. I invited Vita over when Austin was making dinner. I told her I needed her support, that things were getting worse, hoping that somewhere, deep down, she still trusted me, her friend since college. That night, Austin made his special pasta, the one that always left me violently ill. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. When he went to answer the door, I made the switch. My plate for his plate for mine. I ate his food. He ate the meal he'd prepared for me. We sat there, making small talk. Vita, oblivious. Austin, smiling that patient, deadly smile. Within an hour, it began. He became disoriented, confused, dropping things, slurring his words. Vita watched in horror as Austin couldn't remember what day it was, couldn't stand properly, kept asking why we were looking at him like that. I pretended to be concerned, called poison control, described his symptoms. They told me to get him to a hospital immediately. Vita, her voice shaking with panic, was already dialing 911. That's when I laid it all out. The journal, the video footage, the lab results. I showed Vita everything while Austin, still reeling from his own poison, sat there. I watched her face, the dawning horror, the sickening realization of the years of gaslighting, the poison, the slow, deliberate attempt to erase me while he played the devoted husband. By the time the ambulance arrived, Vita was holding my hand, so tight it hurt. She told the paramedics to test for poison, showed them the food samples, and when they asked who prepared the meal, she pointed to Austin. There's more evidence, I told them. So much more. The police came too. They found the bottles in his desk drawer, more substances in his car. They found searches on his computer. Inheritance laws, untraceable poisons, how to commit the perfect murder. Update 1. It's been 21 days since Austin's arrest. They kept him in the hospital for 3 days to treat the poisoning. Doctors said it was a complex mix of heavy metals and pharmaceutical compounds, something no one could mix up by accident. I keep thinking about how that could have been me in that hospital bed, how many times it almost was. The police interviewed me for hours, asking why I waited years instead of months. It was exhausting trying to explain how Austin had systematically isolated me, convinced everyone I was mentally ill, controlled my every move and all our finances. The detective didn't look convinced until Vita spoke up, describing how Austin would casually explain away my episodes, how he'd show edited videos of me acting crazy at dinner parties, how he'd coached all our friends on what to do if I ever made accusations. When they searched our house, they found a hidden compartment in his office safe. Inside were vials labeled with dates and dosages, a journal detailing my symptoms after each treatment, pages of observations about which combinations made me sleep longer, which caused memory loss versus physical weakness. It was all so clinical, so detailed, so utterly planned. They found research on poisons that mimic natural diseases, printouts about untraceable toxins, a file on Annie's lake house, complete with underwater topography maps and a waterproof bag with weights. Vita hasn't left my side. She sleeps on my couch, says she doesn't trust me to be alone. She keeps apologizing for not seeing it sooner, for believing him over me. I can't even be angry. He fooled everyone. He was so good at it, so believable in his concern, so patient in his execution. Austin's family, particularly his mother, Sydney, showed up at the police station screaming about false accusations, insisting I was the unstable one, that any medication he gave me was prescribed. She's calling everyone we know, claiming I set him up, that I poisoned him in some twisted revenge fantasy. The preliminary hearing was yesterday. Austin sat there in his orange jumpsuit, a stranger. He wouldn't look at me, but I felt his hatred burning across the room. The prosecutor laid out the evidence, the videos, the journals, the lab tests, the containers of poisons. The judge denied bail, calling him a flight risk and a danger to the community. His lawyer, however, argued about tainted evidence, my mental instability, claiming it was all a misunderstanding between a devoted husband and his paranoid wife. That's when they brought up Otto. The police had questioned him after finding texts discussing compounds and dosages. Otto claimed he thought they were talking about supplements, that he had no idea Austin was poisoning me. But the prosecutor showed evidence. Otto had stolen medications from his pharmacy, helped Austin research obscure toxins, and even ordered specialized chemicals using his professional credentials. Otto is out on bail, his pharmacy license suspended, his lawyer arguing he was manipulated by Austin. The terrifying part is how believable that defense sounds, how easily someone could buy that he was just another victim of Austin's manipulation. My medical tests came back last week. Years of low-dose poisoning have damaged my kidneys, compromised my liver function. I have neurological symptoms that might never fully resolve. The doctor said I'm lucky to be alive. The amount of heavy metals in my system should have killed me. The only reason it didn't was because I started secretly taking those charcoal tablets, because I stopped consuming what he gave me, because something in me fought to survive even when I didn't fully understand what was happening. Justin finally called yesterday. He was crying, apologizing for not believing me. Austin had convinced him I was having psychotic breaks, that my accusations were part of my illness. Justin admitted Austin had shown him edited versions of our arguments, spliced to make me look unhinged while Austin appeared calm. He feels sick thinking about all the times he encouraged me to listen to Austin. Austin's lawyer contacted mine yesterday. They're building a defense around my mental health, claiming I've been suffering from delusional disorder for years, that Austin was administering prescribed medications because I refused to take them. They've subpoenaed all my medical records, all my therapy notes. My lawyer says they'll twist everything to make me look crazy. I had a panic attack in the grocery store this morning, just looking at pasta sauce, suddenly unable to breathe. All those dinners, all those meals he prepared specially for me, trusting him. Vita found me curled up in the aisle, hyperventilating. An employee asked if I needed an ambulance, and I just lost it, screaming that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't making it up. Sydney called my mother, convinced her I'd had a psychotic break. My own mother showed up with papers for an emergency psychiatric evaluation, telling me she just wanted to help, that I needed time in a safe place. Vita had to physically block the door when two men from a psychiatric facility showed up, had to threaten to call the police before they left. My mother cried that she just wanted her daughter back, the one before all this poisoning nonsense started. The financial investigation is another nightmare. Austin had been moving money for years, small amounts into accounts I never knew existed, secretly selling off our investments, liquidating assets. The detective says it looks like he was planning to disappear, setting up an exit strategy long before I caught him. They found evidence he'd been researching countries without extradition treaties, contacting someone about new identification documents, and a go bag with cash hidden in his office. Yesterday, they found a second phone in Austin's car. Contacts I'd never seen. Messages to people I don't know discussing the plan, the timing, and making it look natural. Messages to Otto about increasing dosages and accelerating the timeline. Messages to Logan, a name I'd never heard, about cleaning up loose ends and handling the Vita situation. The police are trying to locate this Logan person. I can't sleep without seeing Austin standing over my bed, watching me breathe. Can't eat without wondering if there's something in my food. Vita prepares all our meals now, but sometimes I still can't make myself swallow. Lost another 5 pounds this week. My therapist says it's PTSD, says my body is still in survival mode. Says it might be a long time before I feel safe again. Tomorrow, we have a meeting with the prosecutor. They want me to walk through everything again, chronologically, to make sure their case is airtight. My lawyer says they're worried about the mental health angle Austin's team is pushing, worried a jury might be swayed by the grieving husband narrative, the idea that he was just trying to help his troubled wife. They need me to be strong, consistent, believable. But how do you convince strangers of something that sounds so unbelievable? How do you prove you're not crazy when someone spent years making everyone think you are? Austin's parents have filed a petition for guardianship over him, claiming he's been unduly influenced by me, that I've been mentally abusing him. The absolute irony would be laughable if it wasn't so terrifying. They've hired a psychiatrist prepared to testify that Austin exhibits signs of coercive control victimhood, that he may have been acting under duress, under my control. The complete inversion of reality is staggering. The police still haven't located Otto. He missed his check-in with his probation officer yesterday. His apartment was cleaned out, his car found abandoned at a bus station. The detective called this morning, saying they're expanding the search, that he's now considered a fugitive, that I should be careful.
Stay with someone.
Report anything suspicious. As if I haven't been doing that for years. As if my entire existence hasn't become an exercise in hypervigilance. I think about what would have happened if I hadn't waited. If I'd gone to the police earlier with partial evidence. If I'd tried to run without proof. Austin would have found me, would have convinced everyone I was having a breakdown, would have had me committed, or worse. He would have taken me to that house, to those deep, dark waters, to that weighted waterproof bag. Update 2. It's been almost 3 months since my last update. So much has happened. Austin's trial finally began last week. His lawyer kept hammering on my history of mental instability and paranoid tendencies, painting Austin as the devoted husband, pushed to the breaking point by his wife's deteriorating condition. Then the prosecutors showed the videos I recorded. Austin, standing over me while I slept, testing if I would wake up, adding substances to my food, my drinks, my medications. The entire courtroom went silent, watching him methodically contaminate my water bottle, then just stand there, watching, waiting, with that chillingly cold look on his face that wasn't concern. His lawyer tried to argue the videos were taken out of context, that Austin was checking my breathing because he was worried, that he was adding prescribed medications because I refused to take them. It's terrifying how plausible he made it sound. They found Otto 2 weeks ago, hiding at Annie's lake house, the very place Austin had planned to take me, the one with the deep water and no witnesses. Otto broke down during questioning, admitted everything, supplying Austin with pharmaceuticals, researching toxins, calculating dosages, how Austin had talked about accelerating the timeline. Otto's testimony is devastating, but his lawyer is already working on a plea deal, claiming he was manipulated, coerced, even afraid of Austin himself. Vita testified yesterday, describing how Austin would show everyone videos of me, acting crazy, how he'd coach our friends on how to handle my episodes, how he'd tell stories about things I'd supposedly done or said that I had no memory of. She broke down crying as she described the night of the dinner, seeing Austin disoriented from his own poison, realizing everything I'd been saying for years was true. The defense tried to paint her as my accomplice, suggesting we'd conspired to frame Austin, even trying to make it seem like we'd always been lovers, that this was some elaborate revenge plot. Vita held firm, but I could see how much it cost her. The medical experts testified about the substances in my system, the damage to my organs, the neurological effects that might be permanent. They explained how the poisoning was deliberate, methodical, designed to mimic natural disease progression. Austin's lawyer kept interrupting, suggesting alternative explanations, asking if my symptoms could be psychosomatic, manifestations of mental illness. One doctor finally snapped, "Heavy metals don't appear in your bloodstream because of anxiety." The jury seemed to respond to that, but who knows what they're really thinking. Sydney approached me in the courthouse bathroom yesterday, cornered me when I was alone. "I know what you did to my son," she hissed. "I know you're the sick one." She was so convinced, so absolutely certain of my guilt. The scariest part was looking in her eyes and seeing Austin there. The same calm certainty, the same absolute conviction in their own twisted reality. I realized then where he learned it, how deep this goes in his family, how he was raised by someone who could rewrite truth just as easily as he could. Justin testified today. He admitted Austin had shown him edited videos of me, convinced him I was having mental breaks. He described conversations where Austin would express concern about my paranoid accusations months before I ever suspected anything, showing how Austin had been laying the groundwork, creating witnesses to my supposed instability long before I started getting sick. The defense tried to discredit him, suggesting he was changing his story out of guilt, that his testimony was unreliable. The financial investigator presented evidence of Austin's meticulous planning, the hidden accounts, the liquidated assets, the research on countries without extradition treaties, the go bag with cash, and fake identification. The defense tried to spin it as Austin preparing emergency resources in case my condition worsened, suggesting he was planning to take me somewhere for specialized treatment, that the cash was because he didn't trust banks after some fraud incident years ago. Again, the explanations sounded just plausible enough to create doubt, just reasonable enough to make you question everything. They finally located Logan. He was Austin's college roommate, someone I'd never met. Logan admitted Austin had approached him about handling a situation with Vita if she became suspicious, offering him money to scare her off. Logan claims he never intended to go through with it. The defense immediately moved to have his testimony excluded, claiming it was hearsay, irrelevant, prejudicial. The judge allowed it, but instructed the jury to consider it in context, whatever that means. My mother still won't speak to me. Sydney got to her so completely, convinced her that I need help, not justice, that Austin was trying to save me from myself. Vita tried to talk to her, show her the evidence, but my mother just shuts down. She says she can't bear to see what I've become, says she's praying for me to find my way back to reality. It's like losing her all over again. Like Austin is still taking pieces of my life away, even from behind bars. The defense brought in their psychiatric expert yesterday. He never examined me, never even met me, but still testified for hours about how my symptoms align with delusional disorder, how people with this condition can construct elaborate conspiracy theories, can misinterpret innocent actions as malicious, can even manipulate others into believing their delusions. Watching this man, who'd never spoken a word to me, confidently describe my supposed mental illness to the jury was surreal. It felt like being erased in real time, like my reality was being overwritten right in front of me. Our side brought in experts too, psychiatrists who explained how gaslighting works, how abusers isolate their victims, undermine their perception of reality, and create doubt in their own minds. They explained how Austin's actions followed the classic pattern of psychological abuse. Vida and I still live together. We're both too afraid to be alone. She's still the only one who really understands what happened, the only one who saw it with her own eyes, who can confirm I'm not crazy, that it all really happened. Without her, I don't know if I could have survived this. Don't know if I would have had the strength to sit in that courtroom day after day, facing Austin, facing his family, facing all the people who still think I'm making this up. The jury starts deliberation tomorrow. My lawyer says the evidence is strong, but warns me not to get my hopes up. Says cases like this can be unpredictable, that Austin's performance as the concerned husband is convincing. We need to prepare for any outcome. Ending. The jury deliberated for 4 agonizing days. 4 days of sitting in that courthouse hallway, jumping every time a door opened. Vida was next to me the whole time, holding my hand so tight it hurt. My lawyer kept saying no news is good news, that quick verdicts usually favor the defense, that the longer they talked, the more likely they were actually examining the evidence. Still, by the 3rd day, I was convinced they didn't believe me. Convinced Austin's performance had worked. When they finally came back, I couldn't breathe. Then one word.
Guilty.
Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, poisoning, psychological abuse, financial fraud.
Guilty. Guilty.
Guilty. Austin didn't react at first. Just sat there, staring straight ahead like he hadn't heard. Then his lawyer whispered something, and his face changed. For just a second, the mask slipped, and I saw it. Pure, unadulterated rage. The real Austin, finally visible to everyone. The sentencing was yesterday, 15 years without possibility of parole. The judge called it one of the most calculated, cruel cases of domestic abuse she'd ever seen. She said the methodical nature of the poisoning, the psychological manipulation, the financial planning, all pointed to someone who was a continuing danger to society. Austin finally spoke, claiming he still loved me, that he was only trying to help, that someday I'd understand everything he did was for my own good. The judge cut him off, telling him to save his manipulations for his prison therapist. Sydney had to be removed from the courtroom, screaming that I'd ruined her son's life, that I'd manipulated everyone, that someday they'd all see the truth. Security had to physically escort her out as she lunged toward me, still screaming that I was the sick one, the crazy one. Even with all the evidence, all the testimony, she still can't accept what her son did. Still can't see him as anything but the victim in all this. Otto got 8 years with a possibility of parole after 3, part of his plea deal for testifying against Austin. Logan got probation for coming forward about the plans to intimidate Vida. Justin sent flowers to my apartment, but I haven't responded. I still don't know how to feel about everyone who didn't believe me, who thought I was imagining everything, who watched me deteriorating and sided with Austin anyway. My mother finally called last week. She didn't exactly apologize, but she said she'd been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of remembering. Said there were signs she'd missed years ago. Things Austin would say or do that seemed off, but that she dismissed. She asked if we could talk sometime. I said, maybe someday. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust her again. Don't know if that relationship can be repaired. Vida says I should try, says family is important, but Vida doesn't understand that my mother chose Austin over me. Chose to believe I was crazy rather than believe I was being poisoned. Some betrayals cut too deep for simple forgiveness. We're moving next month, Vida and I, somewhere new, somewhere without memories. She's become my family through all this, the one person who saw the truth when it was right in front of her, who believed me when it mattered most, who stood by me through the investigation, the trial, the endless questioning of my sanity. We're not running away, we're just starting over. They say good things come to those who wait. I waited 3 years to be free.
3 years to be believed.
3 years to reclaim my mind, my body, my truth. The waiting nearly killed me, but in the end, it saved my life. Call to action. This was my story. It's been a long, terrifying journey, and I'm still dealing with the physical and emotional scars. Have you ever been in a situation where everyone believed a lie over your truth? What would you have done if you found yourself in my shoes? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts.